Hey, what's up everybody? AMP here, and today I was going to show you how to start playing around with GraphQL that's inside of Contenta CMS. Contenta is a Drupal distribution that I've recently been playing with. It's really good. If you want sort of Drupal as an API right out of the box, Contenta is probably the one to go with. It's pretty cool because, as I said right out of the box, it gives you a lot of API configuration. So if you go to /API, you'll see all of your REST endpoints set up for you. So we're building this VR app. So this is going to be a Drupal 8 site that powers a Polymer front end. And so naturally it's going to be decoupled. I need some access to the API. We've always used REST in the past, and it's got some really good REST endpoints right out of the box based on JSON API. What it also has out of the box is GraphQL. Now, I haven't played with GraphQL a whole lot. From what I've seen, it's looked really good. So I took some time just to briefly familiarize myself with it. And from what I can tell, it's pretty sweet. So let's take a look at how we would use GraphQL to power this home screen. So this is going to be a home screen of different VR scenes that you'll be able to click on. So in the past, we've used REST for that. Let's see if we can use GraphQL to drive that interface. So the first thing that we can do is, inside of Contenta, go to GraphQL /Explorer, and you should get this graphical interface. And this is an interface for you to practice building queries and mutations and things like that. So we're going to see what the structure of our Drupal 8 site is here, and how to expose that data with GraphQL. So first thing I'm going to do is open up an object here, and let's see here. I'm going to type node. So as soon as I start typing node, it's going to try to autocomplete some of the stuff that I have access to. We're just going to focus on NodeQuery here, and if I hit NodeQuery and just hit play, then it's going to insert a default value, because it can't be empty. So it's going to try to insert a default value, which is count. So as you can see, here on the right hand side of the screen is the result. So this is what, if I were to send this query to the GraphQL endpoint on Drupal 8, this is the data that I would get back. So what this is saying is that there are 79 nodes in my Drupal site, which is correct. So let's see what else we can do. Naturally, knowing nothing about this, I want to see what else I have access to. So I'm going to command click on this node query, and in the right hand side it brings up some documentation. So we can see that there's a type of entity query results that I can explore, but there's also some arguments. So there's offset, limit, and filter. Whenever you see arguments here, it means that you can open up some open and close parens and start adding some arguments here. So I can say offset, and we'll say 0, and let's say limit this to 10. We'll run that and see what that gives us. It's just giving us count right now, so that doesn't really make sense. But what would make sense is, let's just keep going, and let's also do filter. And with filter, you can send it some additional information. So let's see what we can filter on. I'm going to click NodeQuery filter input. So this should list all of the filters that you can, all the fields that you can filter on. So you can filter by title. Let's filter by type. So we'll say type, and it's expecting a string, and my type is scene. So I created a content type called scene, and hopefully this should work, although it is complaining, isn't it? Can't recognize token type. Let's see if it's just expecting this. Oh, yep. So it looks like it was just expecting the double quotes there. And it's still giving us count, but it's saying count of 2. So that's correct. I have 2 scenes. So I have 2 scenes in my Drupal site. So that's correct. Let's see what else we can search on. So let's go back and click on Entity Query Result. So as you can see, it has count, which we know about. It also has entities. So let's see what would happen if I also include entities here and ran this. So it attempted to pre-populate a bunch of fields, which is cool, but it's giving me an error saying required arguments to query entity access. So it looks like it needs some more arguments to use that. So I'm just going to get rid of that, hit play again. And now it's returning the correct information. So I have 2 scenes in my Drupal site, living room and bedroom. So that's correct. So obviously we're probably not going to want all of this information. Let's say that we just wanted the UUID and the entity label. Everything else should be fine. Okay, that looks better. Cool. Let's see what else we have access to. So I'm going to click on Entity. It's going to pull up some stuff here. So we see all of those fields that were displayed over here by default. Let's see what these implementations are. So these implementations will allow you to get more fine-grained and see the actual fields that are in those content types. So as you can see, node scene. If I click on node scene, it has the body information. It has a field image. So that these are all the fields that we want to get to that are in our scenes. So I am going to, I think those are called fragments. I'm not sure, but let's just say that they are, and if I'm wrong, it's too bad. So if you want to use a fragment here, get access to it, you do three dots, and then you say on, and then the name, which is node scene. So as you can see, there's a lot of auto-completing here that's going to try to help you out, which is really cool. I'll hit play, and it says field scene not found. Let's see what that's all about. Okay, I might have just needed to have some more information in there. All right, so we can see that it has a title on that, which is the exact same as entity label. So if I wanted to, I could probably get rid of that. Let's get rid of entity label and use the title. That looks good. Okay, so let's see. So the cool thing, as you can see with GraphQL, is that you can build your own endpoints, basically. So where REST are sort of pre-made endpoints that if you want some different information, there's a couple ways of doing it, but really what you end up doing is making multiple REST calls to get all the information that you want. So if you pull up this node and the node gives you what the author ID is, you'll generally have to make a call to the user endpoint to get more information about that user. Whereas this will let you drill down into multiple references and pull out the information that you need, so that you only have to make one call. So let's illustrate that. First, let's print the body here. Let's print body. And body is going to autocomplete with some stuff here. So I only need the processed field. Okay. So I had the processed field there. That looks good. So this is actually, if you notice, this is some A-frame code. We're using A-frame to display our virtual VR scenes. So I need the body, and then I need a thumbnail, because these are going to be just screenshots of what the VR scene looks like as a preview. And that is stored in a field called field image. So I'm going to browse over here and find field image. Okay. Well, let's take a look at that. So as you can see, field image only gives us the target ID. The field image is just a reference to a media type. So instead of doing field image, if we look on here, we see that it's implementing field node field image. Let's try that instead. So I am going to do another on field node field image. Let's try to run it. Okay, getting some errors here. Let's say title, okay, or target ID. Okay, so instead of looking on the actual field image that's associated with node scene, I sort of pass through that reference, and I'm now looking at the model that's on the image itself. So I'll have access to way more information. So let's take a look at what information I have access to. I'll click on that, and it has the two fields are the target and a reference to the actual media item, which is what we want. So we're going to say entity. And that's going to autocomplete with a bunch of stuff. And let's see here. Let's look on here and see what else there is. Because what we do, we really just want some information about the actual image itself, like the URL and the title and the alt text. So if we scroll down, we see this thumbnail, the thumbnail of the media. Let's take a look at that. Oh, that's cool. So if you click on that, it'll actually bring up the documentation that's associated with it, which is nice. So I'll click thumbnail, and it's going to pre-process a couple of these fields. All right, so I think we're getting closer. Getting closer here. Let's see. We don't care about that. We just care about the URL. Let's just say we just care about the URL and the alt and title information. Okay, now that is not showing up for some reason. This might have to come off of the field image itself. Let's try that. Unexpected end. Got these all messed up here. Let's see, that should do it. Okay. So that fixed it. So basically we had to implement this this fragment on the actual field image field itself. And now that we do, we have all that information. Which is good, except for the fact that it's giving us what looks like the actual original image, and that's because one of the fields on here is derivative, which is the image style. So you can specify which derivative you would like to include. which is something that we definitely want to do here. So we'll leave that information, and we'll say derivative. And as you can see, it takes an argument, which is style. So if we click on that, we can see all the different image styles that we have in the system. So let's get large style. So we'll say style large, and let's see here, and which will bring up an image resource, and here are the specific information that we have, so we can say URL. Click that, and now look at that, we have a link to the specific image style that we're looking for. So that is a pretty good, maybe what we can also do on node scene is maybe we can take a look at the user. And the user will just give us the target ID. And so let's, instead of target ID, let's look inside of that entity itself. And now we have access to the name and everything. So this is something that would have been an additional REST call, possibly, that we can now just say, get us access to that name. Okay, so now we have the name of who created it. Now there are some other ways, so as you can see here, you can probably notice that this isn't the best way of categorizing things, so there's a lot of nested properties here. If that's important to you, then I think that there's a way of aliasing things to make it a little nicer. I don't know, that's just some of the videos that I've seen. Like I said, I haven't delved too far into this. But, okay, so the next step is, what do we do with this query? So this is a pretty cool interface, but ultimately, how do we get this data into our front-end app? So there's a project called Apollo that aims to connect these front-end libraries and front-end frameworks to in your front-end applications to GraphQL. Again, don't know a whole lot about it yet, but I did find, since I'm using Polymer, I found an element that attempts to do this easily. So we're going to implement this Polymer-Apollo-Client. I've already downloaded it, and I've added its components. I've imported them into my Polymer app. So it's at Apollo-Client. And the one thing that you'll need to do is, this is in the root of my Polymer app, I'm going to set up the GraphQL client. So this is just telling Apollo where to find the GraphQL endpoint. And it's real easy. You just, in this config property, you say the URI or the location is at this endpoint. So as you can see, there's just one endpoint. Whereas REST, you have a bunch of different endpoints. GraphQL, you just have one endpoint, and you just send it different queries and to get the list of different data. Okay, so we had that set up, so it should know where to talk to the GraphQL endpoint. Now, let's take a look at this scene list. So these tiles that you see here, these cards, these are being rendered through this VR app scene list. So this is going to be a component for going and getting a list of scenes and rendering them as a card. So as you can see, I have 3 paper cards here that are just placeholders. Let's see here. Okay, so the Apollo client component will give you a subcomponent called GraphQL query. So we're going to use that. So right above paper card here, I'm going to say GraphQL query. Okay, and what we're going to do is this is going to be a query. And we are going to go back to our graphical interface here. And I'm going to copy all of this and paste it right in here. Don't format that. Okay. So that should be all that we need to do to get GraphQL to execute that query. Now, the one thing that we need to do is, well, let's execute that, and we'll see what happens here. So I'll refresh my app, and I will open up my network tab, and it's not an XHR request, or well, it is technically, but the information is not going to be in there. We're going to look back here. So here's the original options call, and then here is the post request. So inside of the post request, we could see a request payload, if you can see here. View parsed here. We'll open that up. Okay. Oop. Let's get rid of this. Okay, so we can see that we are receiving some information here. Or that maybe that was just that was what we sent it. I wonder what the response. Aha, there's the response. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so here's our query. So we had one query, and it returned the data. And there's our count. And there's our list of entities. Very cool. So that's the exact information that we're looking for. So cool, it's working. Now, how do we get that information into here? So GraphQL has a property called Result, and that's a two-way data bound property. So we'll bind that to data. And now we should have access to data. So data should contain all of that good stuff. So let's get rid of this mock-up stuff, and we'll start replacing it with some real content. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a template in there and say is DOM if, and this is Polymer specific obviously, but we're going to say if we have data. Maybe if we have data dot, yeah, let's say if we have data, and then if we have, don't format. Okay, so if we have data, we're going to do a DOM repeat. So this is just iterating over these. This is a Polymer way of doing it. And we're going to say the items are inside of data. NodeQuery. And entities. And we'll see here, inside of entities, item title. All right, let's see what that gives us. All right, so I think it's working. As you can see here, it's printing out our titles for each of those. So living room, bedroom. So now we just move this up here, replace the static content with these variables. Oh, I'm sorry. No, these are going to be a reference. So we're going to say that the items in here are going to be item. And instead of data query entities, we'll have access to them just as item. Title. Aha. There we go. Living room, bedroom. For the image, we'll replace them with item. Let's see here. Okay, so we have title. So to get the image, let's drill down in here and we'll find the path. So it's under field image, entity, thumbnail, derivative, URL. So that's probably why people make aliases, but really that's not that horrible. So it was item, field, image, entity, thumbnail, derivative, URL. Ah, cool. So the two screenshots we have are an actual screenshot and ham, Christmas ham, that is that I just used because it was in Contenta. So thank you for putting in Christmas ham. And let's see, what else do we have? So we have an author. So maybe we'll do div class card body is the item UID name. No. Let's check our entity, UID, entity name. All right, admin. So this was authored by admin. And we'll say we have to update this link. And this link, let's see. It's a little tricky. So we are including the entity ID. So let's use that as a link. So in Polymer, we can make these functions here, which is like format URL. Format URL is we're going to be sent the UUID. And we're going to return, let's just do this for now. Let's build a fake one. Is scene / UID. And these are template literals, so I can just put string and print a variable there. So this is going to be a function that I give it a UID and it returns a formatted URL. And I can use this in here. So in href, I'm going to say run that function. And I'm going to send you the item entity. And I think I have to put a $sign here. So let's see here. Now this won't go anywhere because I don't have routing set up, but as you can see, that should be working. Actually, that's on port 81. Okay, so that would be working. So cool. So we just wired it up. So that is how you can use these GraphQL queries very easily inside of your front-end applications. So hopefully I'll be doing more videos on these in the near future. Later.